Italian suits. And then, you know, you go down, you travel with them, and then you catch them and their buddies. They got these big Kazal glasses in Miami down by the pool. And you couldn't buy this shit. Like, you couldn't buy Fila at the mall. You had to go to the tennis company to buy Fila. You couldn't buy.
How much was it?
$600.
When was this?
Like the late 70s.
Wait, a tracksuit was $600?
We was paying $600 for velour Filas in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
It's like paying $1,800 now.
All the time.
Wow.
All the time. Kazal sunglasses, not just the big ones. We buying all of them. How do we even know? Because you had to go out to DLC in South
and
ask for Kazals, right? So a lot of that, just we start mimicking. And then
how did it filter to the streets, quote unquote, of Detroit? Is it an underworld thing?
Yeah, well, I think the players started mimicking it, right? And then we were close to our people. So occasionally the big guys in the streets start wearing velour. Then that whole generation. So in this town, I think YBI just took it and made it a uniform, right? Because they didn't switch it up. Pop and them would occasionally throw on a jogging suit like Chuck and Irving Goldfar's friends, is like some of the Jewish friends, Italian friends, or wear silk shirts with all the gold chains. Like, so wearing the gold chains and showing off your jewelry, that didn't come from us. The Italian guys, the Jewish guys, were wearing shirts buttoned all the way to their navel so that you could see all their gold chains. As we do, we just took it to big rope chains hanging down to your nuts. But that ain't where that came. We didn't start that, making sure that your jewelry could be seen. That were the Jewish guys, the Italian guys were doing that in the 60s and 70s. And we were mimicking that. And so then when the young, quote unquote, YBI, they just took it to, they made it a uniform. They made it a dress code. The Fila, and then they put their own spin on it with the Adidas. And
so it's one thing for your parents or even you with the income level you're at to be buying that stuff if you chose, but did you ever have a moment of just as an adult, just observing the world, like thinking, man, some of these people in Detroit or elsewhere just don't have the, like, why are they wearing this? What did the brand worship seem to get out of hand, inappropriately at income levels that it couldn't handle?
Oh, well, okay, I think, yeah, that's a multi-level question. The workers started to want to dress like the bosses in the street. That, I would say, is something I saw different from more so from the 70s and 80s. I mean, if you was middle management or a big fella, then naturally you was going to be wearing top of the line this, top of the line that. But that didn't mean if you was slinging bundles, slinging packs and working off tops, that you thought you should dress like your boss or your boss's boss. But somehow that's where
what you wore kind of did establish your social class.
So if you remember back in the 80s, when it started happening, people started saying he perpetrate. People started
that you can't just go buy one expensive outfit and then present yourself as that you're from the economic class that wears that. People be like, no, you
not that. You ain't, and that's what they say.
But like now,
he perpetrating a fraud. He done rented that car for a week.
With respect for renting a car.
And went right.
I mean, that's for prom or something. But the idea that you would go out of town, rent a car, and take pictures, like, it's fraternity.
But that whole thing of it, I guess now we see where it led to. That whole thought pattern, I really ain't got it like that, but I'm gonna pretend, and I can trick people.
It's a very feminine. It's like shit women do.
The fact that they'll say, if you wear a pair of Nikes, wear a pair of Adidas, like you've committed.
My childhood, fact that I had rode horses as a child and went to horse camp and sailed sailboats and all the and I would say, mockingly, you guys think having light-skinned friends is a big deal. I got a lot of white friends, you know. I didn't go to school with privileged black kids. I went to school with privileged white kids.
And would you say that the black professional class perhaps, or there's a critique of that they were, whether by choice or they felt they had to, sort of imitate mainstream white, whereas if you were black with a much higher income level and you could just buy your way and you didn't really have to kowtow to the white people because you were buying the same things as them.
Yeah, and I think we new money blacks understood first. White people don't. White people think this term black elite and black bourgeois is a joke. That's an illusion in the black bourgeois' mind that they're being like white people. Right? That's, to be honest, that's an illusion in their minds that they're behaving like the aristocracy of white folks. Whereas, you know, a guy like Eddie Jackson worth millions of dollars in the early 70s, he didn't change or try to change his demeanor just because he was around a bunch of fancy white folks. He was going to be him and actually be just as accepted and maybe even more appreciated because he's just being more authentic.
But fast forward 10 years from 1970, Eddie Jackson and your dad are in federal prison. Both of your families have moved back to perfectly fine houses, but back in Detroit. So the fortunes are much more up and down.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck Goldfire to go away, and they went. A lot of my suburban friends' parents end up, not a lot, but it was that.
Well, the ones your dad knew professionally, not the ones who just lived around the corner.
Or even like once in a while, kids that I would be going to country day, summer school with, or Cranbrook summer school with. Their parents might be in the news for some type of business indiscrepancies or stock trading or stock manipulation, and he had to resign from Chrysler's board of directors because of this allegation. So it's obviously not the same as New York or Detroit Free Press saying drug lords live and laugh of luxury kind of attention, but I think just going back, it was different. The black new money never saw the need to try to pretend like they were part of the white aristocratic class. If we eat chillins, then we eat chillins. Even though I know a lot of rich bourgeois black folks eat chillins too. But openly, you know, we were not nearly as
Well, you weren't concerned about appearances to the white man. But they could have came from them working for.
And when I think new money in general, whether it's black, Italian, Jewish, new money, the nouveau riche is the French word. It describes people who just came into money and they're going to flaunt their money, right? So whatever generation is the first generation to have lots of disposable income, they're going to wear the jewelry. They're going to drive the fancier cars. They're going to wear designer clothes. Whereas quote unquote old money or people who, how can I put an example? We could have shopped at Brooks Brothers, but we didn't shop at Brooks Brothers.
Well, you know, Brooks Brothers is specifically for wearing a certain kind of clothes to work.
Correct.
That's what it is. It's work clothes for certain jobs.
Right.
It's like Dickies for professionals.
Right.
Not stylish, you know. I mean,
I get older. When I was younger, growing up, Pop and them would be wearing Italian shoes. They weren't buying Johnston and Murphy.
Because they weren't bankers.
Right?
I mean, it's not what it was for. So they knew.
But I started wearing Johnston and Murphy because those.
You wanted to blend in.
Those nuances. My friends were shopping at Brooks Brothers.
Well, you were just buying it. It's not a nuance, and Brooks Brothers ain't better than Italian. It's just you were in a crowd where people were wearing that, and the young people tend to want to conform to what their friends do.
Crew neck sweaters with button-down shirts. Then you go to a private school that has a uniform, which further enforces V-neck cardigans with button-down shirts. So while my friends are still wearing silk shirts, and I like silk shirts, but it's something, you know, as I got older, I started being around people who didn't wear silk shirts so much.
So, okay, let's stay on the class thing. So fast forward, your family bought something called the Cotillion Club, Where was it at? What's a cotillion? What pictures were in there, and what did that mean to your father?
Okay, cotillion, I believe the Webster Dictionary definition of a cotillion is a formal party.
Coming out for a girl or no?
I think it's
Cotillion, all that.
but a cotillion means just a very formal party. So Cotillion Club in Detroit was on Puritan between Cheyenne and Littlefield.
So that's like the Hubble Schaefer area, or Schaefer?
Between the two big industries. So you're on Puritan, east of Schaefer, west of Myers, right? So the Cotillion Club, so there's the Lynx, there's Jack and Jill, there's co-eds, but the Cotillion is the oldest of the black.
Oh, that was a club itself.
It was.
I mean, it was a society.
Right, the Cotillion was a society.
Oh, right. Was that a step up from Jack and Jill, or it was for adults?
It's the same.
Oh, same.
It's the
you pass through them in different ages.
Right. All the kids are in Jack and Jill eventually will have their debutante coming out party
at the Cotillion. And then you become a Lynx.
Ah. It's all one.
And that still goes on here?
To this day.
Is it?
To this day.
The same is it dwindle or are you on it?
No, I'm on that group.
It's still pretty.
I still have a lot of friends from all their kids. Most of my friends' kids became members of Jack and Jill.
Really?
At least half. Still their wives are members of the Lynx. Because I'm there. If you're a black doctor, dentist, or lawyer, accountant, very likely your kids are going to belong to Jack and Jill. Not as much now as in the past.
And still some fact.
But definitely. And if you're my age or older, for sure. So the Cotillion is where that group of, I'm going to you keep saying, and I'm generalizing, Palmerwood, Sherwood Forest community, University District.
Northwest Detroit Black Elite.
Northwest Detroit Black Elite. Second or third generation, not just college, but they all went to the colleges. University of
and a lot of professional degrees.
Dartmouth. You're blacks with Ivy League lineage, going maybe 2 generations of Ivy League in their family. These are the black folks that go to Martha Vineyard for Memorial Day and Labor Day. Right? Now, some of them did come from some of the policy key of the 20s and 30s. That's a different story. Those people that bought their way into those society, a lot of the policy kings had bought their way into those social circles then. But my dad, when he was a child, being a man basically of my complexion, the Cotillion Club had basically a brown paper bag test. If you were darker than a brown paper bag, you weren't going to be admitted into the club or into that social circle.
So that at certain times and places, there's almost like a third race of like, you weren't white, there was African ancestry, but you if you were that light, then you're probably, substantial European DNA.
That, and then just, it goes all the way back, to Malcolm, or anyone who studied the plantation economies. The house Negroes, who were often the illegitimate children of the slave masters, were given often education.
Or there's like it's almost like they're not really black exactly. They're definitely not white, but they're a mixture of the two.
Upon 1865, they had a huge head start on 95% of the African Americans coming out of emancipation. Many of them already had trades. Many of them were already educated. Whereas your darker complected coming out of the emancipation was about 99% illiterate, right? So that class of black folks, after the kids got a certain age, when they turned 15, 16, 17, they throw these big parties where all the young men wear tuxedos, all the young ladies wear these elegant dresses, and they have a cotillion party. And there'd be a class of 62, class of 72, class of 82. And when Dr. Friesen was ready to sell the Cotillion Club, again, about the difference between new money, being liquid rich and being status rich, he naturally went to the other members of the Cotillion and said, hey, I want out. I'm ready to sell my practice. I want to move down to Florida. You guys need to buy the club from me. and there was a lot of heeing and hawing.
They couldn't do it.
They couldn't. Nobody was gonna take a collective of them to buy it.
How much was it?
Like 200 grand.
It's not that much money.
1994.
I mean, not for 20 doctors and lawyers and accountants and dentists.
Well, that's where he became irritated with.
Especially with the mortgage, you can get a mortgage.
Well, he didn't want. Yes,
But I'm just saying, with all these, how many members did it have?
50.
Yeah, I mean, that's $4,000 each.
I mean, I'm sure had Pops not moved so quickly, they would have organized themselves. But Dr. Freon got irritated with his fellow Cotillion members. God rest his soul, went to a real estate broker, very prominent this past now, Matt Frederick. Done real estate for all the other big guys in the time, Mr. Moore, my father, Eddie, just everybody. And when he told Pops about it, I was like, that's that place they wouldn't let me in when I was a kid. I don't want nothing to do with that. And he's like, just come look at the place, Courtney. And once Pop went in and he saw all the pictures of the place, it kind of hit him like, oh, this would be pretty ironic. I should buy this place because they'd have never let me come in here.
But yeah, it went from an elite to something owned by gangsters to money launder in a legitimate club, but a nightclub. So a nightclub, anyone can go in. A private club, only members. And then disabled is you're servicing people in society that, have problems. Yeah.
Disabled veterans.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting to see that.
That transition, but
Three different elements of society
that we always kind of chuckled at because we're not from that class. Even though now, I mean, I think our story is always American story. So now, my niece is a Harvard graduate. Me, my sister, mom, all graduates, college graduates. Sister and mom, multi-degree. Sister, bachelor, master's, and law degree. So, as the American journey goes, you go from being on the outside to being on the inside. And we just happened to get a chance because our ascension with obviously the backstory of Pops. We went from Webb, we went from Calvert in 12. I remember the projects, to Calvert in 12, to Mark Twain and Outer Drive, to Northland Gardens, back to Outer Drive and Pinehurst, back to Southfield.
Okay, one more topic.
Yeah.
So where all of America are, other than people that are or purport to be some type of revolutionary, which exists,
Justice, don't be.
Materialism and consumer culture. So we've had many interesting discussions trying to figure out specifically, and I think we did a good job of it, specifically where these iconic Detroit things like Cartiers and the early adoption of the Filas, not just high-end, like the most elite consumer goods that exist are the fads of, one of the young people of one of America's poorest cities, and how that connection from 1970, early 70s, late 60s, black underworld and other black business people interacting with who and picking up these styles and passing them on. And you talked about being at the forefront of the Fila jogging suits when you had to buy them a certain place. So just talk about the rise of brand worship and how the material culture trickled the very refined and most expensive material culture trickled from the late 60s, from the black elite down to the streets of Detroit today.
Okay. This will be a socioeconomic point to cause some reflection. But from my perspective, I have to blame the nouveau riche Jewish American community for this phenomenon.
Maybe still now. Country, like black people that were freshly up from down south versus the ones that had been here or taking on those behavior characteristics, and what you refer to your group as a nouveau riche versus the black professional class. So I guess the country people would even be a step down from that. Though you could be country and move into one of those.
Well, obviously, besides vocabulary, right? If you ain't been around people from down south and you're playing spades, you might not know what a possum is. And I'm not talking about the mammal. Possum is a possible book, right? So there was just some language. But more,
What about home behavior, like with the discipline of children?
well, I mean, so friends, corporal punishment, that I attributed back to the plantation, that disbehavior is, violence is used to reprimand children, or violence is used to settle all kind of disputes and disciplinary. The comfortability from those down south with the use of violence. I mean, getting a switch off a tree, right? And whooping your kid on demand of his offense. It's commonplace.
People don't even know what's a switch off a tree.
Oh, you take a thin branch. Really, what it is, they're recreating a whip, is what they're recreating. They take a very thin, long branch off a tree, take all the leaves off of it, and they can get as detailed as they want. You might even take the bark off. But what you create is a organic whip, and it stings just like a whip and leaves webs on one. So that spare the rod, spoil the child, that's taken to a whole different level. These people did not know about the timeout. Your kid.
Did you see that?
Yeah, Eddie's mom next door. Eddie's mom, guy arrested, great woman, helped raise me. Veen Jackson, Veen was from Mississippi, and when Eddie and Patricia would misbehave, they might have to get a switch. I got one whooping with a belt. I mean, now let's put it in some context. Any of those blacks from that Jim Crow era believed in corporal punishment, but the official nature of those from down south, like of getting a switch and making sure that the spanking was administered in a very aggressive.
Yeah, they beat you like y'all ain't related.
Different times, yeah. Now you look at what happened once we don't do any spankings with belts or switches or any of the above. But even as a kid, though, I used to be like, wow, that seemed like a lot.
As you guys moved out to the higher income area and you made specifically black friends that were from medium to higher socioeconomic status, but also just any of your suburban friends, was there equal amount or less corporal punishment? What was their relationship with their parents as far as that type of stuff?
Definitely there's a correlation between, I think, academics and corporal punishment. The more, the understanding that children will be children, understandings of let children express themselves, and even if they're a little bit irritating, you should just let them be. That's not something you punish a child for. That's definitely, there's some class income issues that play out there. My friends whose parents were teachers, doctors, lawyers, did not probably punish their kids in the same way as my friends whose maybe parents made almost as much, who were skilled trades at the plant, maybe had their own tool and die company, that kind of thing.
Well, okay, so let's immediately segue that into, though you did join a fraternity.
Correct.
And of course, there is somewhat of a culture of violence in the fraternities. I mean, I know there is because I've seen it, but connect. So what were the kind of people going to the fraternities? Did you feel out of place? And then if most of the kids in the fraternities were from backgrounds where there wasn't corporal punishment, why was it violent in the fraternities?
Because the hazing, first of all, the fraternities were started by the elite of the African American community. I'm a member of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, 06, founded at Cornell University in 1906. So you can imagine African Americans attending Cornell in 1906 were the best and the brightest, period. And it come from very well-off as the book is called, People Like Us classes. In fact, if you read that book, People Like Us, it talks about the Black elite. Eugene Kinkle-Jones, one of our 7 jewels and our founders, and Robert Ogle, another one of our jewels, one of our founders, spoke about their family lineage, spoke about in that book, People Like Us. So this is without getting too deep. Those fraternities were formed a lot off of Masonic traditions, and there had to be a weeding out process. And hazing became much more of a weeding out process and a discipline building thing, more so than a class hazing thing. And then, as people from different classes started to get into the fraternity, I think that definitely accelerated the amount of violence that went on during hazing.
You think it was worse now or when you were in than it was in 1905?
Right. In 1906 at Cornell, the pledging, I do not assume, was the same as it was, say, at 20 years later at Florida State.
So you've discussed in depth many times that there are these other black underworld figures out in that upscale neighborhood you grew up in, but there were other wealthy black people who weren't criminals.
The majority weren't criminals that were well off.
What sort of things? What was the whole spectrum of what they were doing, or what was their source of money?
When where I grew up at Northland Gardens, a subdivision of Southfield, early 70s, it was the haven of the nouveau riche, or the new rich, new money people of a bunch of different ethnic groups. It was still where Jewish Americans, who had finally really just hit their stride and went from middle class to upper middle class, were living. It's where the Motown elite. So it's not, you have to ask yourself, so when Smokey Robinson and Otis Wilson and Pete Moore of the Miracles and Holland Dozier Holland, all those guys, when they left Northwest Detroit, they didn't move to Palmer Woods or Sherwood Forest or some of the enclaves of old black money. They moved to Northland Garden, the home of new money, where their neighbors would be people like the Smith family, the founders of .net, a shrimp shack. Upper level entrepreneurs, the Early family, shout out to Melvin Early and Al Early and the whole Early family. They had a line of transmission companies, transmission shops all over the Detroit area. Shout out to the Pye family, a Pye funeral home. The Parham family also, so these were people who were that generation. They had not inherited any money from their parents. And they had ascended to financially probably more net worth, or definitely more disposable income than the quote unquote Jack and Jill bourgeois of Palmer Woods and Sherwood Forest.
As given the source of your family's money, was there any difference in the way that, say, your parents or you interacted with the black professional class versus the black legal business owner and their kids? I mean, how was did you ever have any these doctors' kids don't want me playing with them, or your mother couldn't make friends with certain people? Do you remember any of that?
I have to be honest, and I have to live in my truth. I'm sure that may have existed, but I was crystal clear by the age of 9 that Daddy had more money than all y'all peoples. Whether you were doctor, whoever, and your parents had went to Harvard or Yale in 1920, to be honest, I wasn't impressed, because I was like, y'all ain't living. I mean, we got a Steinway baby grand in our living room. I get piano lessons from Jewish women at Juilliard's. So we very quickly bought our way into those circles and societies. And in the end, and we're not unique like that. The Irish would have the same story. Eventually, if you get enough money, you get grandfathered in to certain social networks, without any prejudice or discrimination. But I definitely saw that, and I think me and you were speaking off camera. If you were the Smith family, say at .nettus, right, and you owned 8 of the biggest shrimp shacks in the city, but you're still getting your money When you check at your stores, you're still interacting with the masses of your community,
The regular people.
right? If you run Pie Funeral Home on Plymouth, still the majority of your client base are your people, are the regular masses of your people. If you're the Earlys in your transmission shop, again, if you're the Simpsons, shout out to Donnie Simpson and family. They was out there. He's a DJ on the radio, right? And he was the biggest DJ in the city at the time. But he still, there was that connection, unlike maybe my Palmer Woods and Sherwood Forest friends who really lived in these really isolated worlds. I used to tease them. I'd be like, life does exist north of Pembroke and south of Curtis. There is life east of Woodward, and west of the Lodge. But they didn't. That was their orbit. And they had all come up and went to Jack and Jill and
And what's for not many people are going to know what that is. What's Jack and Jill?
Oh, Jack and Jill is a social organization of the Black elite. Been going back now to the 1920s. I mean, for at least a couple generations, it's basically where you met your wives and husbands to be. And God rest his soul, I had a friend, Craig Johnson, 250s you heard us talk about. I was like, do you know anybody really who didn't go to Hampton Elementary? And then they went from Hampton Elementary to UAD High School, Mercy High School, Marion High School, Brother Rice, Sharn High. Few were at Renaissance, couple at Cass. But, I mean...
Now, they weren't even going to Cass.
Not really.
Oh.
But the legacy people, there was still back...
Because when I was at Cass, it didn't seem like, the elite. I mean, they were middle class, but they didn't feel like...
I think by the time, that's that 10-year difference.
I was 89, I started.
Right. So by the mid-'80s, like kids like, God rest his soul, Doug Diggs, the Diggs family, a very prestigious family here in Detroit. Doug went to Cass. There were still a lot of... and that was out of lineage.
But most of those kids weren't even going to Cass. They were out of the city.
Even if they lived in the city, even if they lived in the city, they didn't go to school in the city. But I would say when I got to high school and really started going and being around those people, I definitely thought you guys really have this seeming like air of superiority to the rest of your people. And most of your parents, I was like, your moms work. The kids we grew up with in Northland Gardens, there ain't nobody mama work. Ain't no black woman in Southfield, living in Southfield in 1970 have a job. It was one job, husband getting paid, big bank, and you're a suburban housewife. My mother's job was to decide between Jacobson's and Bonwood Teller. Her job was to decide between Hawaii or Florida for vacation. That was her job. So I was like, but I got older. I learned a little bit more about it was because they were, for example, speak about my friend, a dear friend of mine, Craig Johnson. His mom had went to University of Michigan in the 50s. Yeah. That was, for real. His grandma went to Spelman, I think in the 30s or something. These are people so they were sophisticated people. For instance,
They didn't just have money.
she would say all the time, I'd say, where's that at? And she'd say, at the end of that preposition, Courtney. Those kind of people that, like enunciation and diction were very important. Whereas even in Southfield, in Northland Garden, maybe those families had more money. But the diction, there was still a lot of ain'ts and y'alls and come-ons and fix that.
And what, having now the time of, that was 45 years ago, you were growing up, off the top of your head so the people that either were in the underworld or that owned...
Don't be mad at me, bourgeois Fred.
That owned some business, what was the outcome of their children and grandchildren versus the outcomes of the children and grandchildren of the maybe less cash flow but more education?
Now that is an interesting point, and that is where,
because those businesses, a lot of them went away, and
they were not as financially savvy as the academic.
So they made more, but they spent more
They made more, they spend more.
and kept less. In general,
I didn't hear about a trust fund until I started hanging out with those kids. And it's very rare in the African American community, you start hearing kids talk about, granddad, she's spending the money from her granddaddy's trust, her granddaddy left. Well, the people in Northland Gardens, again, they had money, but wasn't nobody talking about trust funds. They didn't have that level of sophistication. So not as much of that, all that money, or 98% of that money from Palmer Woods and Sherwood Forest got transferred to the next generation. Whereas I would say half the kids in Northland Gardens don't do as well as their parents did. Whereas all the kids from Palmer Woods and do just as well as their parents did, if not better.
and there's been some real bad stories. I mean, like everywhere everyone grows up, there's some kids who have something like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Were there more really bad outcomes in one of the other groups? Or are
So I give that to that Jack and Jill crew, man. They ran a tight ship, and their parents were getting these are good.
so none of them had super bad outcomes.
No, because of that regimen and that regime,